Good morning, my friends. I think the time is right to do a garden tour. The temperature is okay here in the morning where we can still stand it. And we got our work done out here. Sounds like the cat's going to join us too. So stick around. Let's go walk through the garden. So last Saturday we got a crazy storm come through. There was tornadoes involved a little further up north in town. The rain was coming basically sideways in sheets. Lots of tree damage. There was over 350 dumps at the tree dump in town the other day because there were so many limbs down and trees down. We kind of dodged a bullet out here at our place. We're a little further south and it just skirted us, but we got the rain and we got the wind. Thankfully, we didn't have any trees break, but it soaked the garden down pretty good. Yesterday, as soon as yesterday, it was still too muddy to be out here in the garden, but we bounced right back into 100-degree temps. So this is what the garden looks like now. So yesterday was too muddy. Today it's nice. Still a lot of moisture in the ground. So let's do a walkthrough of the garden here. Cat's going to join us. So this space here I've reserved for our broccoli and cauliflower when I bring it out. Let's get you on further down the line here. This is some butter crunch lettuce I planted out about 4 days ago from the greenhouse. So it's looking really good. It was starting to yellow a little bit in the greenhouse. It has since greened right back up. This is some lettuce that has been pulled out already. That lettuce has been cut. Doesn't look like it's going to come back. Now this lettuce here, if you cut your lettuce high enough, it will grow back. And this lettuce here is growing back from being cut. It looks like some more butter crunch lettuce. All this is coming back after being cut. We had some spinach down here. The spinach is all done. It's bolted and starting to dry up because of the heat. There's one little plant here left, but there's no real usable spinach on it. We'll be pulling these out. The kale is still going strong. Very hardy leaf vegetable. We've cut this down, I believe, 3 times already, and it's bounced right back. There's still plenty of kale to be had in the garden. Very prolific crop here. And our kohlrabi is over here in this next row. And you can see it's starting to bulb. You can see that down there. So it won't be long we'll be harvesting some kohlrabi. If you remember, right after we planted out, I planted these in seed, from seed. And we had a really torrential rain right after I planted. So a lot of the seed got covered up too deep. And some of this row did not come up. But that's all right. We got enough left. That's why we plant a little extra. And then right here we have our cucumbers. We have probably 5 or 6 in there we need to pick. And as these grow longer, we're going to grow it up on this trellis here. We've got some dill here on the end of the cucumbers, nice and handy. These are our jalapeno peppers. I don't know if you can see this one here. This was a little puny one that was an extra in the 6-pack when we bought it. Actually, I bought, I think, 2 4-packs. But that was an extra little plant. I thought it was going to die. It wilted over the ground, but it's bounced right back. So these are our jalapeno peppers right here. And we've already started getting some peppers. You can see right there. So it won't be long we'll harvest those. We're going to make some more cowboy candy this year because we really enjoy that. And all of our friends and family enjoy it also. And then we have a little spot here. I'm going to plant our artichokes right here. They're ready to come out from the greenhouse. I'll show you here in a minute. Now artichokes out in California grow as a perennial. The leaves will die back in the winter and the plant will come right back from the root. However, out here in Nebraska, we have to grow it, I believe, as an annual. Here's our bok choy down here. it won't be too long. We can be harvesting this stuff. Be a couple weeks. Looks really good. Now you can see our tomato row here. We've got marigolds planted in with our tomatoes. I've heard that's a good practice, so I just did it. I don't know the real reason why. I think it has to do with pests. But you can see our tomatoes are finally got out of their funk and they're growing. Up until about a week and a half ago, these weren't much bigger than when we planted them. They just would not get going. A lot of people in our area are having the same issues. But now they're growing. So we'll be able to start tying these up onto the trellis and weaving them through. You can see this plant here is doing really well. These on this end are the Sweet 100 tomatoes. They put out a lot of fruit. And then we have these celebrities. Again, these were no bigger than what we planted about a week and a half ago, and now they're finally growing. So these will be nice. That's about our puniest one that's left. And even it's starting to green up and starting to grow. I think it was the rain. Gardens really love rain. They prefer it over groundwater. So if you get a rain, you get a real good growth spurt from your vegetables. But I'm pleased that these tomatoes are now growing. I was worried that we weren't going to get any. And then here's our tomatoes down on the end. We lost a couple of these. I had to replant out of the greenhouse. These were my Better Boy tomatoes down here, but I replaced them with some celebrities that I still had in the greenhouse. This marigold here is looking kind of funky. I don't know why. Our peas are climbing the trellis now, and we've got a handful of snow peas. I've just been munching on them as we walk around out here in the garden. They're pretty tasty. I like them. Very good. Problem is I eat them while I'm out here and we never get a real big bunch of them. So here's our other side of the trellis. Now this row here, we had bought some cabbages from our local garden center that were kind of on the tail end of being okay to plant. They were kind of leftovers at the garden center. And the garden center was pretty well cleaned out because after that first storm that I told you about, a lot of people got hail and it completely wiped out their garden. So you can imagine they went down and just cleaned out the garden center, so there wasn't much left. So we brought these home in an attempt to grow them. We've got, this one here is kind of weak. I don't know if it's going to make it. But these two here are actually going to make heads, look like. And this was some more here that didn't make it. That's all right. We don't buy a lot of cabbage from the store, so we don't need a lot. But we need to start using more. This is a green variety. See, we got some some pest damage on there. But the center head in there is starting to form. Now this down here is our habanero peppers. My buddy Arnie out in California makes a really good hot sauce from habaneros and jalapenos. He mixes jalapenos in with them to tone it down just a little bit. Hope you all don't mind Cat coming along with us today. He's being pretty vocal. He never does it till I walk out here. I think he's trying to get my attention all the time. So this row here, our sugar baby watermelon, finally starting to grow. It really didn't want to do anything until it rained. Very strange, but I replanted both of these, I think twice. So this is the second go around on planting on these, and now they're finally growing. This one here is a little bit bigger than that one, but it'll grow quickly and fill out nicely. This is our crimson sweet watermelon. Again, that was very sluggish. They were like a 2-leaf sprout forever. And they stayed green, but they just really never grew past that. I don't know if they liked the weather pattern that we were in. But they're finally growing. So we're happy about that. This cantaloupe was planted 3 times. And I don't know if the seed was bad or what. But the last time I planted this, I just carpet bombed that hill there. And I dumped the whole rest of the packet that I had in that hole and we had 2 that sprouted. So I took the strongest one, and now it's growing good. These 2 here are butternut squash. As I'm out here weeding, when I come out, I take my hoe and I drag the big runners on even with the line, so we're not way out in the row. But they'll eventually get out into the row no matter what. Like these Hubbard squash. These Hubbard squash will be pretty soon. They'll take over this whole area right here. But that's alright. If it shades the ground, we won't get weeds. But I've been dragging them up on the row too, as you can see. Try to keep them in the middle. And then this is our buttercup squash. It kind of looks like a acorn squash, but it's got a kind of weird bottom on it that's different from an acorn squash. You can look up buttercup squash, and I think you can see a picture of those. And then our green bean trellis down here. We've had some crazy sun the last few days. I think the tops of these are getting a little sunburnt, but they're starting to climb really well up onto our trellis, and we will be able to pick beans standing up this year instead of crawling around on the ground like we normally do. I never grew pole beans before because I didn't like the idea of having to stake them and give them something to climb, but the cattle panels make it so much easier. And this is just a 16-foot cattle panel here. I'll show you this one over here so my shadow's not in the way. But it's a standard 16-foot cattle panel. Our rows are 8 feet apart, and we just put two T-posts that are a little bit narrower than the cattle panel on each row, and then you just bend it. And I'm 6'3", and I can walk under these without ducking my head. So I think this will be something that'll return to the garden. I'll probably do another one on the end of the row next year, so we have exactly 3 trellises out here. Now this is our yellow, like a yellow zucchini, but it's closer to a yellow crookneck. It was supposed to be like a yellow looking, really zucchini-like squash, but as we've been picking them, they're closer related to a crookneck. I'll show you one in here. It doesn't look much like a zucchini. You can see my girls are down in here working. So the yellow squash has done pretty well. It had better germination rates than the zucchini did. However, I did plant, I think I replanted these and I replanted these because I had germination issues. Now we had some pest pressure out here on the squash, and I think you can still see a little bit of the residue of that, but I caught it early. That's why you want to be out in your garden fairly often. This plant here was absolutely decimated. It was laying down flat on the ground. I thought it was going to die, but we brought some neem oil out here, which is non-toxic, and we sprayed neem oil on these things, which kind of knocks out those little aphids, the black aphids and stuff like that, which is what I think we had going on. The center of the plant has taken off again, so this plant's going to be fine. Now, we do have ants out here, and the neem oil doesn't really help with the ants. You can see the ants here in this squash flower. So, if any of you have anything that takes care of the ants, let me know. I'm not big on pesticides, so something natural that'll do it, which I doubt there is. And I don't want to put out like traps and stuff, but that would probably be a better alternative. That way I don't have loose pesticide running around, and maybe they'll just take that food back from the trap and eliminate the whole colony. But this is the zucchini down here. I replanted these a couple times, some of these. This one's been replanted. This hill never came back. That's been planted twice. And then down here on the end, there was 2 that did not come up. These have been replanted twice and still didn't come up. So I don't know if it's the issue with the seeds or what's going on. Maybe they had a lot of seeds left over from the whole COVID mess, and they just repackaged them or something. But I've had seeds go 3 or 4 years and still germinate just fine. But that's kind of an overview of the garden out here. We had a big rain on Saturday. Rained crazy heavy, and that's why it was so muddy and I couldn't get out here. So this morning I got the wheel hoe out and I ran it down the middles just to break it up so it wouldn't crust over. I'll show you more on our wheel hoe in a later episode we're going to do on weed control in the garden. Garden looks nice. I love it. Mother Nature's not kicking my butt yet, but she's been trying. So let's go to the greenhouse and I'll show you what's left in there. So this is our broccoli here, cauliflower back there. We had 3 of them that didn't come up. That's our artichokes right there. We only had 2 of those germinate in here, but that's fine. We'll get those growing. And then we still have some insurance tomatoes in here. They're getting kind of spindly. I probably need to transplant those into bigger cups. And we still have our rhubarb that I need to plant, find out a place that I want it, because those will grow perennial here in Nebraska. And we have some out there. But I messed up and I weed sprayed our red rhubarb that we had, and I really enjoyed the red. This is called Canada Red. I need to get that in the ground, but I got to find a place where it's not in the way and it won't keep getting weed sprayed. And I'm thinking about putting it over in the corner of the garden that it won't be in the way there maybe. It's only 8 o'clock and it's already 90 degrees in the greenhouse. So we turned our fan back on. We're going to leave this door ajar open today. This is Kelly's lavender down here. We still got these 2 pluots here that need to be planted out. I think the root ball now is probably big enough to get these planted, but I think I want to wait till fall when it cools off a little bit. And then hopefully we get some moisture over the winter to sustain them and we don't have to water them over the winter. You can see our grapes. You remember what these look like. They were pretty much bare, and we're growing some canes that we can spread out on this trellis that my buddy Steve and I made when he was here. If you remember, this was a real mess over here last year. And then Kelly's got a chocolate mint growing over here as well. We've got a couple spots of that. I've just got through weed spraying this area here. And then we've got a bunch more of this brick that Kelly put around the chicken coop that we're going to put in here so we can mulch this. There's some more chocolate mint. So once these weeds die down, we'll get this mulched so we don't have the weed pressure over here anymore. But the grapes have done really well. I'm pleased with these. We pruned them down to just 1 cane. And there was nothing on that cane for a while, but it finally sprouted. And we'll have some nice canes. You can see the Concord grapes here setting on fruit. But nice long canes. I've been pruning these as we go. The canes that I don't need that are growing the wrong direction, I've been pruning off. You can see them laying down here in the grass. So I want them to focus the energy on the canes that I want. Here's the girls. There's little Mr. Noisy this morning. What's up, cat? There's Hershey. These chickens have gotten so big. There's Kit. Kelly's got a shade cloth that she purchased that we put on top of the coop to give them some shade in here during the day. I got Kelly's sign hung up yesterday, finally. It's been so hot, I haven't been wanting to come outside. Now, Kelly got a silver-laced Wyandotte windsock, and it still fools me when I come out in the morning. I'm like, how did a chicken get out? Because I always see it up there on the corner. The wind tore up Kelly's little windmill the other night. It was blowing so hard, pulled some vein off of it. I'll have to get that out to the shop and fix that for her. We have another hosta here, and then these naked lady bulbs that were here, we mowed those down. And then we have our strawberry shortcake raspberry right there that's growing a lot better than last year, but it still needs some more. Maybe we'll need to fertilize that or something. Kelly's planted her flowers around the benzebo over here, and they're coming up and starting to sprout and starting to bloom. You can see some blooming over here. And then our herb pot over here, this is one of our self-wicking, water-wicking lick tubs that we built. You can look for our video on that last year, but Kelly just cut all these herbs down about a week and a half ago. And they're already back. We used some of our chives last night for dinner. Now I transplanted some red rhubarb back here in the back of the grain bin, but I don't think it gets enough sun. It is growing, but it should be bigger than that. Now here in our benzebo, the garden center let us know that our pub set that we bought to go in the middle of this is actually going to be available around the first part of August. There was a crazy back order on them, but we're finally going to get it. So this will be a more usable space out here once we get table and chairs. This is a rocker we picked up at an auction in town for like $40. Can't beat that price. But this is going to go somewhere else on the property. And we have a cover for it, but the wind's so bad here that I didn't put the cover on it. We've already got our lighting up in here in the benzebo. I need to run power still. I have the wire and everything. But that's going to be another project out in the shop coming up. Instead of going and renting a trencher for $300 to trench in our power out here, I'm going to build a shank to shank the wire in, and that'll be a project coming up out in the shop that we'll show you. Here's a look at all of Kelly's sunflowers out here along the barn. Those all replanted themselves from last year. We let the seed heads go, and after we mowed them and everything, the seed heads scattered down there, and they've come back. I think Kelly planted some of them from some seed heads she had dried out in the garage. You can see our wildflowers are still blooming out here, but the buffalo grass has kind of overtaken them. But it won't be long that I can get the brush hog out here and mow this down, because a lot of these flowers have gone to seed, and that's what I was waiting for those seed heads to develop so I could come mow this down. I've chopped out a lot of the broadleaf. Looks like I got a couple more to do. I just take the shovel out there and chop those down before they go to seed. That way we don't get the seeds back in the ground. I should have come out here on this buffalo grass with like my weed eater and cut the tops off before the seeds matured, and that would keep the buffalo grass from reseeding. And that would have helped out a lot, because I want this whole area to be just completely choke everything out with wildflowers down in here. So when I mow this down and scatter them seeds all over the place, we'll have a lot more flowers out here next year. But lots and lots of varieties. There's still some blue stuff blooming in there. And some of these, I don't know, sunflower looking things, maybe daisies. What do they call these? I don't know. But the bees absolutely love it out here. The bees are constantly, you can see maybe a couple of the big, what do you call the big bees? Bumblebees. There's a few of the big bumblebees floating around out here. But this whole area was full of flowers, and the bees were just loving it in here. There's my bees over there. Still need to change their hive bodies. I got the new hive bodies for them. Just got to get them painted up and switch them out. Our asparagus patch out here is pretty much going to go to seed now, if you can see it with all the weeds in it. This winter, when this dies back, goes dormant, and we mow it down, I'm going to lay a real heavy layer of mulch on here. So next year there won't be the weeds in the row, and the asparagus won't have any problem punching up through that mulch. Now these trees here, I had high hopes that we'd get some apples this year, but I haven't been able to find one apple on any of these trees. Last year these two trees here were covered in apples, and we had a good harvest, and we canned a bunch of apples. But it looks like this year we're out of luck, so I have some apples still in the root cellar. Those two trees over there also no apples. So we're going to have to tough it out this year and stretch our apples out that we have in the root cellar. I went ahead and I combined both of our mulch piles. We were pretty much done using last year's mulch. We had a little bit left, and then we were starting another pile this year over there, so I've just combined them. So we can start rolling those. We're getting enough moisture this year where those are going to cook down really nicely. You can see we got a volunteer pumpkin over there. I took all of our Halloween decoration pumpkins and threw them on the mulch pile, so some of those seeded in. They don't get any water other than the rain out there, so that just goes to show you folks, your garden doesn't need as much water as you think, and a lot of people overwater. So those are growing just fine. They haven't had anything but the rain. So Brandy and I are taking a little sit out here underneath the apple trees, one of our favorite sitting spots. So that was our garden tour, folks. I hope you enjoyed it. We're happy that the garden's finally coming out of its funk and starting to grow. If you remember, we were a month late. Usually we plant out around May 1st, and we did not get this garden until June 1st. And it's only still about mid-July. So this garden's only been in about a month and a half. So I think it's doing okay for that, even though we had to replant a lot of stuff. So I think I'd be a lot happier if we got the plant at the normal time. The garden would be looking much different. You can see that if you go back to last year's video, last year's garden tours at this same time. The garden was booming. But that was a test plot garden last year, so we had a lot more planted for one. We don't need near as much this year. Cat's back after it again. But it is looking up, so we're happy about that. So till next time, stay safe, stay healthy. We love you guys. Come back and see us here on Mark Kelly Farm.